So in this video we are going to explore a gold farming opportunity in the Halls of Atonement dungeon. This dungeon originally released in Battle for Azeroth and has a ton of trash NPCs which drop loot. The entrance to this dungeon is not easy to find even if you know where you're going. It is in the northeast corner of Revendreth and it is hidden away below all this sinister architecture. It's very easy to miss it even if you go to the exact map location. If you run all of the dungeon, you'll find it isn't particularly efficient. The latter bosses drop relatively little gold and don't have significant numbers of lootable mobs around them. So, as regular viewers by now will know, what interests me is whether farming the orbs around the entrance can be more profitable than running the dungeon as a whole. And it turns out that this is very much the case. The best route to do this took me a while to figure out. I'm showing it here. The exact route is important. You might want to watch this a few times to get it down. You want to not just gather up all the trash, but take them somewhere where you can line of sight the ranged mobs, causing them to come in close to you. If you don't do this, you get two groups of mobs. This isn't good because you want your area of effect attacks to hit every single mob you pulled, so they can all be killed quickly. This takes me almost exactly 2 minutes. I'm using eye level 376 gear here. You may well struggle if you have less than that. I've also got some leech on my gear, which is really helpful. The mobs collectively hit quite hard for a low level dungeon, and you will get quite a lot of healing from the leech that comes from all the damage you do to the trash pack. When you loot the mobs, you'll get an average of 250 raw gold and another 180 gold from weapons and armor that you can vendor. That's really good. This makes this one of the best dungeons to do short gold runs for, despite the fact that the rest of the dungeon isn't really worth doing. You'll make an average of 430 gold per run, which you can do 10 times before instance lockout, for 4,300 gold in 20 minutes. Go to this area here and blow all your cooldowns. Normalised to an hour, this is 12,900 gold, i.e. if you run the dungeon 10 times in 20 consecutive minutes, then went away until your instance lockout expires and came back twice for a total of 60 minutes of gold farming, you'd make 12,900 gold. The short run is faster raw gold than any dungeon except the mother lode, and in fact this will get you slightly more gold than doing the equivalent short run there, but Halls of Atonement takes slightly longer. So why would you want to run this dungeon instead of the mother lode? Well, you get about 1,000 gold before instant lockout more than you do from the mother lode using the short run shown here, though of course it takes longer to hit instance lockout. Additionally, what you can do is 10 runs of the mother lode and then 1 Halls of Atonement, preferably on an alt you parked outside the halls so you don't have downtime travelling between the dungeons. Instance lockout doesn't apply to unique dungeons, so you can do 11 runs before lockout instead of 10, if you include Halls of Atonement in your hourly farm. There's actually an amazing exploit which will allow you to get around instance lockout and run this, or indeed any dungeon or raid, as many times as you want in an hour. Unfortunately, there's no way I can publish something that game-breaking without alerting Blizzard, so that's going to be restricted to my Patreon for the time being. If you can't afford the Patreon, or you just don't want to sign up for whatever reason, you should also know that if you have a number of max level characters on different realms, and you have some way of getting the gold back to your main, instance lockout does not apply across realms. So for example, I could run 10 Halls of Atonements on my mage, whose realm is Airy Peak, and then immediately switch to my hunter on Outland and do another 10 runs for a total of 20 in 1 hour. Now, this is important. Don't try this on a tank, because tanks don't do enough damage. So the NPCs enrage, and this happens. Quite. For those who like to push these things, you'll notice that if you kill the first boss, you can access a secondary area with densely packed NPCs, which looks like a good gold farming opportunity. I could not make this work, however. I got stunned too much trying to farm them. It was too slow. There are visual indicators for one variety of stun, but there doesn't seem to be any way to avoid the throw glaive speed reduction. Additionally, these mobs collectively only seem to drop about 200 gold in total, less than half the amount the main trash pack in the first boss area drops. If you can, however, find a way to gather up these mobs somehow, perhaps making use of certain classes' movement abilities, then this would be a nice addition to your farm. It is worth emphasizing that in addition to the raw gold you get, there's also the possibility of really valuable purple items like this one dropping, and these can be individually worth hours of farming by themselves. Often 20,000 gold or more. Those of you who like to focus on raw gold understandably don't want to waste time selling greens and the like on the auction house, but I would make an exception for this type of exceptionally rare item. It only takes up one slot in your inventory, and provided you post it with other items best sold on the auction house, like the lightless silk you'll get from this farm, the time you need to spend posting is very small.